Broadway, they were just saying shame to make sure that he did not. I moved all the way east to go around, and he kept pushing. They kept pushing with their sticks.
What did you see?
Well, I arrived about 1:30, 1:40 in the morning, got out and walked to Day and Broadway, and the police were in full riot gear. I mean, it was a paramilitary operation if there ever was one. I mean, which sets up, here it is, 1:30 in the morning, what we call a stealth eviction, 1:30 in the morning, and they were just lined up 2 blocks from on either side from the park so that nobody could get near. With this solid wall of police, I was wearing, and I brought this, a hat which says the National Lawyers Guild Legal Observer, and as you can see in color, it's quite bright, and
it's
at night
fluorescent green.
It's fluorescent green, and then I was wearing it, and I had a pad and a pen, and I was there to take down the names of people who were arrested so we could follow them through the system and just observe what was going on. And as I'm standing there, some African-American woman goes up to a police officer and says, I need to get in, my daughter's there, I want to know if she's okay. And he said, move on, lady. And he kept pushing, they kept pushing with their sticks, pushing back, and she said, and she was crying. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he throws her to the ground and starts hitting her in the head. And I walk over and I say, look, cuff her if she's done something, but you don't need to do that. And he said, lady, do you want to get arrested? And I said, do you see my hat? I'm here as a legal observer. He said, you want to get arrested? And he pushed me up against the wall. And you know, it was late at night, there was a lot going on. People were, all of a sudden there was like a cordon of police pushing everybody into Day Street between Broadway and Church, and it seemed like they were setting everybody up to get arrested. And then they started, some people broke away, some of the police, and started running after people. I moved away and then decided that I needed to get on the other side. I received a call that there was things that were developing on Pine and Broadway. And so I moved all the way east to go around the police, and then ended up on Pine and Broadway, which is really where I ran into you.
And of course, you had a personal interest as well. Your son was also one of the participants in Occupy Wall Street.
My son was he's a staff person for SEIU 1199, and they were there in support. They were not going to get arrested, but they wanted to show the demonstrators and the occupiers that, and they've been supportive all along as one of the unions. And he was there, and I was watching carefully to make sure that he did not get hurt as well. I was very concerned. At Pine and Broadway, it was sort of a standoff. People were, there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know what was going on. There were some people that may have sat on some police cars just in comfort, but nobody was, I heard later on reports talk about objectivity of the press, you know, that they were jumping up and down and they were taunting the police. The only time I ever saw it when I first got there on Day and Broadway, they were just saying, shame on you, you know, to the police, but that was it. And down on Pine and Broadway, at least until about 4:30 in the morning, I didn't see any provocation whatsoever.
We're going to lose the satellite for Dorley Rainey in Seattle. But I wanted to ask you, Dorley, what did it feel like to be pepper sprayed in the face? This dramatic photograph of you being helped by 2 people right afterwards.
Well, first of all, it's very painful. And when they say there are no after effects, I still have a pain in my lungs, and my voice is kind of raspy. I don't know how long that will last. But the thing really is not about me getting pepper sprayed. It is a much bigger issue than that, and I would like everybody to keep that in mind, that while we're getting pepper sprayed, other issues are not being heard. And that's my problem. I feel issues become a major focus to the detriment of the real issues that cause this whole problem.
And I'd like to ask Chuck Wexler, this whole issue of the police chiefs trying to exchange information. Was there any involvement of the Department of Homeland Security or the federal officials in the discussions with the various police chiefs?
Not on our conference call at all. But you know, if I can just say a few things just in response to the last conversations. This is really the struggle that the police have. This is why, at the end of the day, I think what Norm was saying about, the partnerships and intermediaries and communication is so important, because, this is a no-win situation for the police. And one of the things we've learned out of the 60s and out of the, Chicago Democratic Convention and all the ways and from the South and all of the ways the police have had to handle these kind of situations is, a minimum amount, a use of restraint, and I think that's the real challenge here. The police don't want to be in this situation, and whatever you can do to have intermediaries like the judge, whatever, be the people that are intervening rather than the police. I think it's a no-win situation for most police departments. They have worked really hard to develop partnerships with the community policing, all of those things. And sometimes you have one officer that does something, forgive me, stupid, and it characterizes the entire police force. But I think, if you look at the restraint that police use today versus what they used 10, 20, 30 years ago, it's substantially less use of force, but there's still mistakes, and there's still, officers that are going to act inappropriately.
Chuck Wexler, in New York, we saw a massive phalanx of police moving in the area where the judge was just describing. The police forced everyone out of the street onto the sidewalk and said, just get on the sidewalk. They were screaming to everyone, get on the sidewalk. Soon as people got on the sidewalk, they rushed them on the sidewalk up against the rails along the sidewalk. But I did want to ask you, how involved is FBI and Homeland Security in these discussions, Chuck Wexler?
They haven't been involved. Maybe they were involved at the local level, but nationally, at least on our conference calls, I don't think they didn't have a role.
There were some press reports that there were Homeland Security presentations urging that these arrests be conducted late at night.
That may have been done at the city level. It wasn't on our conference calls. We had no one from Homeland Security made that kind of presentation, nor, we were just comparing notes. We were like, how are different cities trying to deal with this in the most civil way possible? What are some of the strategies? And some cities, for example, they didn't have the police directly involved. They had, the sanitation people and health and human services and folks like that on the front end. And that was interesting, because at the end of the day, why are the police the ones that own this issue? Because the police really don't want to be the ones dismantling these encampments. But why is it? You should ask cities, why do we put the police in these areas? Because at the end of the day, people feel as though you need some kind of legal authority or someone who's going to come in. But trust me, the police do not want to be put in this position, and cities really need to ask themselves, is there another way to handle this, this kind of conflict?
Karen Smith, you retired in 2010 as a Supreme Court judge, so you obviously have dealt over many years with the police department and police officials. Your sense, when we spoke a couple of days ago, and you also talked about your sense that there was a really hostile or tense situation from the very beginning with how the police were responding to the protesters. Could you talk about that?
Yes, well, I don't know if Mr. Stanford was the one who said this, but I think it was structural. You at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, people dressed in riot gear. There were trucks, remember, lined up for the sanitation to just throw people's things in, computers and everything, and now people, I'm told, that can't get the stuff. There was a them and us. Having worked with police officers for years, I agree that there are very good ones. It's not individuals. It is a system that's being set up of us and them. And the other thing that needs to be brought out, and I think it was in the court case in front of Judge Stallman, who was a colleague of mine, is how often do you get the police and the state enforcing private property rights? The contradictions are tremendous, just that. As you pointed out in your article I read, and also even David Letterman last night points out, it's okay for prostitutes, drug dealers, and now we're having our Christmas fair where they're putting up tents, but that's for profit. So that's okay.
Well, explain that, because maybe people in other parts of the
at
country
Christmas
don't
time
understand.
in New York, and I think around the country, there are these little craft things that are set up for private businesses, and they put up tents, and they're there. You have to leave by 11. But
Tents
they're
all over, for example,
over
Union Square.
And the parks,
and the
yes.
parks, Columbus Circle. So that's okay. But, and I don't know what evidence was presented because I wasn't in court the other day about the so-called sanitation violations.